Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one that is post covering finance and property news. It's another Monday evening, and Edwin is with me once again. Edwin, hello, good to see you yet again. Another week gone by so quick.
Another week that we got taxed on, mate. I don't know where he went. And as I think you said last week, you said there's more shenanigans going on and more things that are being reported and not reported, and all sorts of issues going on and people facing. I mean, the world's getting madder crazier by the day. So things are going really, really quickly. Now they want to bring in conscription so that we can go and fight endless wars in all over the world, Martin. Go figure.
Well, it is weird. There was an ex-army general here in the UK talking about we're now in a pre-war stage rather than a post-war stage, right? And my worry is, Edwin, that if that gets traction, we're going to talk ourselves into a war, and politicians will see conflict as a way of deflecting from some of the issues they should be focusing on, in my view. So this is a very dangerous time. I've been on this planet for quite a few years, but it feels like a very, very dangerous situation that we're moving into. And I fear that some of our leaders are actually making bad decisions.
On top of everything else, I mean, what happened to the good old days, Martin, where at the ancient days, where if one nation wanted to take over another nation, I mean, it was the leaders of the nation that got into an all-out win or die situation, right? But now the politicians that we have now is they throw us into to be cannon fodder, and they sit at home eating caviar and sipping on wine. I mean, this is the crazy times that we're in, and I think things are going to get crazier, like the property market. I mean, and the property market is now ramping up, and so we're going to see a lot of crazy things. 2023 was a ramp up of underquoting by many agencies and agents, and all the shenanigans that went on with misleading and deceptive conduct by way of marketing campaigns and so forth. Rent bidding and everything else that the many states have tried to stop, but it just continues behind closed doors, like all the shenanigans in the property industry. If you bring in a policy, or if you bring a regulation or legislation to stop something, the REIs find ways and loopholes to instruct their members to how to get around it. I mean, that's the crazy shit that goes on. I've seen it for the last 28 years, and I don't think we're going to see anything different moving forward, mate.
No, I agree. There's a little bit of history here, and we know how things go on and how people behave. Interestingly, of course, the old petrol prices have started to climb again, and everyone is hoping inflation's being beat. But if those numbers continue to rise, that's yet another factor in the mix. And I get more and more frustrated when there seems to me be a disconnect between what some of our leaders are saying, either those in property or those in politics more generally, and reality, right? And that reality gap seems to me to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I guess that's one of the reasons why we make this show, to try and actually call some of these stupidities out. And, give you an example of the reality gap, right? Because, of course, that there's this planning thing going on in New South Wales where they want to create high growth corridors, right? So, here is the story of, up East Killara Way, East Linfield and Roseville Chase. They want to have high growth corridors, high rise. Except, whilst that may be what New South Wales government wants, actually the local councils have gone completely the other way and saying, no, we don't want this. This isn't what we want. And so there's a real conundrum here in terms of, locals, what they want and what politicians want. It just goes on and on and on, to the point where you get completely conflicting articles side by side.
Well, this is the thing. This is where I think Michael Koziel, the editor, I think for the AFR, he or the Sydney Morning Herald, one of the two. In one article he writes, "This is going to be devastating. North Shore begins its resistance to housing policy." Right, and we know that's going on, and then another article on the 3rd of February. That was on the 1st, and on the 3rd of February, he writes what Sydney really thinks about high density housing. I mean, it's really a situation where Chris, when we first were speaking about this, we said that in our podcast, we said that Chris Mings, when he decided to take on the LGAs, we said that he had a fight on his hands because they will not be giving up as easily as what he thought or what he thinks that they would. And I said that, and I've tweeted that, and I've put it out on social media, and we spoke about it, at length. There's, many LGAs have gone backwards on the ratios. You can be sitting on 800, 900, 1,500 square meters of land, and you can't build dual occupancies anymore. You can't build duplexes. I mean, this is a farce. The NIMBYs in many of these parts of Sydney are holding on to run and rule the councils in these LGAs. So it's going to be very, very hard. Now, on the other hand, you also look at where the politicians, most of the politicians, New South Wales politicians, have got their properties, and it's along these corridors as well. So, what do they really want? Then you got the Premier for Queensland calling for development in lo and behold, in the part of Queensland where he has land holdings. I mean, this is the shit that goes on, and it's smoke and mirrors. On the one hand, it's they say a lot. As you call it, there's a lot of announceables. But when the rubber meets the road, there's nothing to it. There's no real substance. And in the meantime, we've got tent cities, car cities, caravan cities, and trailer cities, and a lot of the, as well, we're going to talk about later on. You've got a huge downturn in available rental properties on market. For the Sydney region as well as the Melbourne region, which is once again, it is really startling as to the real issues you and I know stem from the immigration policies that were really being prepared for in 2019. But hey, let's not talk about immigration. Let's just talk about how we can continue to push money into the market, support the various industries, the real estate industry and the construction sector. And like I said last year, I said that the main developers are waiting for the big handouts that the governments will have to put their hands in their pockets in order to encourage them to build. Because right now they're not going to build on their own money because of the costs. So it's policy gone mad, policy gone wrong, and really. Again, I say it. I don't like to say it in I sort of say it more in jest, and sometimes I think whether or not it will happen is we're going to see a revolution before this shit changes.
Well, exactly. There's so many moving parts here and so many things going in the wrong direction. And it's interesting because one of the things you highlighted was agents doing silly things, right? So there's a lot of that about as well, right? So, suddenly discovering that they've foregone about $3 million of commission because they made some silly mistakes.
Well, this is the thing. A lot of people don't realize, and a lot of agencies and agents don't realize that the agent's commissions is not secured. Particularly when companies or development companies or builders or even property owners, they go into bankruptcy or the properties are taken away from them by the banks, right? Our commissions, we are not secured creditors. The secured creditors are the liquidators, followed by the banks. and even the ATO sits as an unsecured creditor in most of the receiverships and so forth. So, I just got word this morning that there's an agency that was been fighting in the court for almost $3 million worth of commissions that they so-called earned by sale of properties off the plan, but it's across two of the buildings that David Chandler basically condemned. They can't get OC, and the developers are in a lot of trouble, and so they've withheld. It's about $2.76 million worth of commissions, and it's you're on shaky ground. I mean, so on the one hand, you feel sorry for the guys that have done the work, but on the other hand, I don't feel sorry for them because these are marketing companies predominantly that were getting upwards of 8-9% commissions for selling off the plan apartments, and now they can't complete. They sold. They can't complete the transaction. There are a lot of secured creditors there in front of the agents. And that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. So, some would say, karma, on the real estate industry. Some of our viewers will say that. Take it as you will. It's reality. That's how it is. But one of the things that we're going to see a lot more of, Martin, with regards to shenanigans in my industry is no doubt misleading and deceptive conduct by agencies, and particularly in the West, when there's really no need for a lot of this, when there's a lot of demand on the ground at the moment, and across Sydney, across many Sydney markets. The mainstream media and a lot of other people are seeing how strong the demand is, regardless of how high the rates are and the living pressures that people are facing. There's a lot of demand, and all because of obviously the economies of scale, supply and demand, and you've got low listings on market still in comparison to 2023. Week on week or year on year, and we're going to see this could rise, but there's no need to, and that's why I put up that thing, and I tagged Chris Spence and Rose Jackson on that tweet, because it's something that needs to really put to bed. The New South Wales current government has to put this to bed and has to empower Fair Trade in New South Wales to do more about these bad practices.
Yeah, you wonder whether Mr. Minns has been watching our shows, Edwin. What do you think?
Look, I think they have. This is a conversation I'll be having with one of our contributors, with George Russo's from ITC. I mean, he's all over this, and he sent me a message after I posted that tweet. He sent me a message. John Minns is working with government to recruit hundreds of people to clean up the real estate industry. Let's wait and see. We can only cross our fingers and our toes and hope things that do change, and they do start taking the approach that Fair Trade in Victoria have taken, and have got able bodies on the ground, and at the auctions on a Saturday, they've got investigators there. But you know what, Martin? A word to the wise: don't hold your breath. Cross your fingers, but just don't hold your breath.
Well, we've been calling for better regulation of the industry for years and years and years, right? And the dial may have moved very slightly, but we know that there's so much stupidity that goes on, and you make the point again and again, and I want to re-emphasize it. These entities are driven by commission outcomes. Those outcomes are not necessarily best outcomes for either vendors or purchasers. So the structure of the industry is wrong.
Look, 100%, and our viewers can go to the podcast where we raise that specific point. Those avid followers will know what we mean, and the industry is ready. The industry is ready to be disrupted, and the disruption's coming, and it's so let's watch this space. with regards to the shenanigans that go on, all because of the remuneration factor that's really off kilter, under current situations. I mean, this is a model that hasn't changed for since day dot, and something that needs to be looked at carefully, and really bought into scrutinized a lot more by the government. But one of the fundamental things that should happen first and foremost is the commission that you're getting on that the agent gets by way of the sale of the property should be disclosed in the contract of sale. And that'll alleviate a lot of the shenanigans that go on, particularly with off the plan sales.
And of course, the other point is there that because it's a percentage of the sale price, and it's because prices have shot through the roof for all sorts of reasons we've been talking about, including migration, et cetera, et cetera. The commission structures now are very different from what they were a few years ago. But actually, I also see that agents are spending less and less time doing stuff. So actually, you make the point, and it's just worth reiterating. If you're looking at on a dollar per hour basis, it's incredibly high.
Yeah, like it is. We're currently standing at on averages at $1,346 per hour, and that's on average across Sydney. So that's with an average property value of about $1.46 million across acapartments and houses. So when you start talking, even if you start talking 1% that some agents are taking, or on your $3, $4, $5 million property sales, that's $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 by way of commission, and you got to ask yourself the question: what does the agent do for it? How much time do they spend? And what I've seen of late, and I see it over and over again across the decades and the many cycles, is agents boasting how they sold the property within a week. If there was so much more demand, why didn't you hold on a little bit longer and drag the campaign even another week or so? Because the demand is so high, but yet they boast they actually have the gall to boast that they sold the property within days or within a week of coming on the market. I mean, if I was the vendor, I'd be spitting chips. But then again, it's the vendor that accepted the price, right?
Yeah, they signed the contract.
Got told.
Yeah. No, spot on.
Look,
but as you said, that's why the industry is so ripe for disruption. So we'll see. Now let's move on and talk a little bit about WeChat chats. Of course, it's the new year in China. So what are your thoughts there, Edwin?
Well, look, it's the Lunar New Year, or the Spring Festival. So we're moving into the year of the Wooden Dragon. So it's very auspicious for a year for particularly for my sign, my star sign, according to the calendar. So there's not much going on in China. Nothing will really happen. Not a lot will happen over in mainland China with the WeChat charters, because they don't only just celebrate one day. They've already started celebrating, and they will for the next 2-3 weeks. Across if we're going to talk about the only thing that's of substance that perhaps our followers may want to know a little bit more of is really the with regards to Evergrande, but without belaboring that, also is that there are 2 points that I think is interesting, and our followers need to know with regards to the Xi's policy before the collapse of Evergrande. They could read that whole tweet that I put out on Twitter. But the main point is that before, since December 2016, Xi's policy was properties are for living in and not for speculative flipping. Now that we've got these issues with Evergrande and other development companies there in China, all of a sudden, guess what? There is a new policy, Martin. Tricky Dicky's at it again. Xi says, the new policy after all this is a prosperous real property market is crucial to the economic and financial vitality of the country. So, apart from everything else that I put up on that tweet, how the other development companies that are, that are, you could say that are controlled, ultimately controlled by CCP members, how they've stripped Evergrande of its portfolio and really bought stuff for cents in the dollar. Apart from that, and there's now this new push for the locals there in China to invest, because you got to understand the mentality or the dynamics there in China. There's very little by way of people can invest in there. You can invest in the local share market, or you can invest in the property market. You really got no choice, and people want to get growth on the money, on the savings, and really they're your options. It's basically what the government wants you to invest in, and the government now wants you to invest back into property. So no matter how many Evergrandes we get, there's going to be the CCP will have rescue packages ready and available for them if should they fall, or rise, for the rises and the future falls. As we've been saying, a lot of people tend to think that the money that's influencing our market here, the overseas money from the Asian markets, from the Asian communities that is influencing our markets here in Sydney, is coming from mainland China. And I say now the majority of the money is coming from outside of China, that people that have taken the money out from mainland China years ago, and they've had it in other countries. So that's what's happening there. With regards to the local chatterers, I think the local chatterers is what a little bit more scarier and daunting for the local property buyers, because they're not going to take a break over the Lunar New Year. They're poised, because they are ready, willing, and able to buy investment properties, continue to buy their second, third, fourth, and fifth property, whatever the case may be, because there is a huge drive, because they don't want to, based on the current reports that we've been getting from the mainstream media, that they also read, and they also gets translated onto Tencent and all the other platforms that they have. Particularly around the aspect of rates potentially going lower early in the year. What economists, the mainstream economists, are saying with regards to local appetite for property and greater borrowing capacity for the locals, but they're not fearful of the local buying power. They're more fearful of their counterparts, the overseas WeChat chatterers and the silent tigers that are bringing in a hell of a lot of money into the Sydney market. So unfortunately, the bearer of bad news is that the WeChat chatterers are very much on the prowl, and they're not going to take a break over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we still have the lack of supply. We still have a lot of people being squeezed out of the rental market because they can't afford the rents. And of course, homelessness is continuing to rise as well. And the news.com article here is actually worth just dwelling on, right? A makeshift camp has moved into an affluent Sydney suburb, and many warning this is the start of the homelessness tsunami. I'm getting more and more reports from all over the place of people living in cars, living in tents, etc., etc. But because of the lack of supply and everything else, we've got so many people chasing the properties that are on the market. And Edwin, you've said already that listings are down, and we'll talk about it in a second. So this is a massive policy failure, and the consequences, of course, are being felt by real people. And I sometimes wonder whether the politicians have any idea at all what it's actually like to be on the property front line from the point of view of trying to find somewhere to live, unable to find somewhere to live, or indeed competing with cashed up people from overseas who are also in the market. It's a disaster.
Look, it is, Martin. This is where our followers, and we've been explaining to our followers that watch the Monday rants, is that they've really got to be careful with your other indexes that jump out across social media, making out like there's not a lot happening out there in the market, and the market is cooling. We don't see it. Yes, we do use Domain. It is one. We've used Domain as our portal or as our indicator to have a steady report on a week by week basis, so it can be consistent. And also because I use Domain for these reports, because Domain has a consistent Sydney region that doesn't stretch all the way to your old neck of the woods down to Wollongong, as some would consider that to be Sydney, and also all the way up to Woy Woy. They consider that to be part of the Sydney region as well, or even all the way up to Lithgow. I mean, that's just stretching it too far, and they're totally distinct markets that are at play. So when we talk about the Sydney market, we fundamentally talk about the 634 suburbs in Sydney, or the 36 LGAs in Sydney, not all the way, as I said, to all these outer regions. So from our perspective, from what we see, it's a very strong market because of the low listing numbers. You're bringing in hundreds of thousands of new migrants. And there's not enough accommodation, or because of your different scenarios that are at play. You've got your B&B scenarios, Airbnb scenarios. You've got homes that are left vacant scenarios, and you've got all these things behind the scenes that politicians, as you say, don't really. They haven't grasped or don't want to grasp, and I'd say more. It leans more towards that they don't want to grasp. It's, if I close my eyes, I won't see it. And the reason why they don't want to see the problems and they don't want to see the issues, in my opinion, and in Dusty's opinion, is because, guess what, Martin? The political arena, whether it be the left, right, or otherwise, is an industry in itself, and that body of people probably have more investment properties than any other body or organisation in Australia. I mean, I'm one to believe that they've even got more property under their belts than the real estate industry, combined with the construction industry. I'm convinced of that, and hence the reason why they want to turn a blind eye. They don't want to see it, and they don't want to hear it. And this is the issue. So this is where society is really broken, where we can't even look after the people that are in need. And when you see these sort of things happening, the only upside that I'm hearing on the streets from people that own franchise groups with gyms is that they've had an uptick in memberships, not because they're getting more people in to train, but because they're getting more people in to use the shower and amenities. So because you can imagine, as you say, Martin, from your surveys, you've got a lot more people that are sleeping in cars. And if you're sleeping in a car, you've got two choices to go and take a shower before you go to work, or and that is, you either go to a local pub, a local club, or a gym. So there's been a huge uptake in memberships because it's costing people $21 a week to get a free shower.
Absolutely, and certainly the latest surveys, and I've just released the January data. I made a show about it yesterday. Is showing again higher levels of cash flow stress, whether you're in mortgaged land or whether you're actually in rental land, and I fear that it's going to get worse before it gets better. The rental sector, of course, is bust, as we've said several times. It's impossible to find anywhere that's sensibly priced in the major areas. Some people are looking further out, and that means you've got higher transport costs, and some people are ending up renting properties that, frankly, probably should be condemned rather than let. But that's another big story. We talked about mold before. We talked about asbestos before. People are forced to make bad decisions But anyway, according to Stephen Miles, everything in the garden is now wonderful in the rental sector.
Yeah, look, and this is the crazy thing. So because it's wonderful because now the Queensland Premier is going to dish out assistance for for bonds. So I'd like to know what percent they're going to make this loan. Is it a loan? Is it a gift? Is it what is it? All I know is that it's going to be paid for by the taxpayer. Look, it's what they propose to do in Queensland is really not on the one hand, I'd say it's not a bad thing, right? When it comes to rent bidding and a lot of the changes that they're wanting to bring into to control and really rid the rental sector of the shenanigans that goes on there, because it's every man for his every man for himself up there. It's crazy. It's it's even the Queensland rental market is crazier than the wild frontier of the western suburbs of Sydney, one could say, because of the high demand, and it's scary shit up there. It even scares me. So on the one hand, you'd say, yeah, that's great to do that, but to start dishing out loans for bonds, what's wrong with this picture? And could they have used a better counterpart to the Premier on that photo? And I'm going to be a little bit cynical and a little bit critical now. You've got a young lady that's somewhat well presented, and I think she's got a ring in every finger. And she doesn't look like she's in much of distress with all the ornaments and all the jewelry on her.
Well, I don't think that's the person that he helped. I think that's another politician.
Is it? Right. Okay. So I thought that was he was speaking with the person that he's helping, right? So look, it's just one of these.
It was Megan Scanlon, MP.
Right. That he's talking to. Okay, I'm glad you cleared that up, because I was looking at that.
I could be wrong. It's all a bit vague, okay, but it looks to me to be a rather posed picture. So I'm a bit skeptical. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I'm just a little bit skeptical.
If it is, I hope that you're right.
I don't know. I mean, it could be that Megan Scanlon took the picture. I don't know. It's unclear.
Yeah, from a property management perspective, right? Say you're coming in to apply for a rental property. When you start disclosing that you're getting assistance for your bond from the government, because you will be given some sort of a docket, because the ownership of that money is not the person applying. It's the ownership of that would belong to the government. So the property manager will receive some sort of IOU, call it an IOU, call it some sort of voucher, call it whatever you want to call it, and it's not going to put the individual in good stead with the property manager. So do you see what I'm saying, Martin? It's really not. It's helping, but not really helping. Yeah. In the practical sense.
It's another example, Edwin, of a finger in the dike solution, right? So it's not fundamentally dealing with the broader issue. It's like first home owner grants. All it does is actually give a little bit of headroom for a few people, but actually lift prices more and makes it more difficult elsewhere. If you start giving bonds out to people so that they can actually go rent, that's going to put more upward pressure on rental costs, isn't it? By definition. And the taxpayer is up again. And, somebody asked me the other day on Twitter, how much is actually being spent by federal and state governments to support the property market? And the answer is, it's a massive number if you take negative gearing and rent assistance and some of the other stuff that's out there. And so what we have here is a market that is actually artificially being propped up by all of these various things that are going on, But the bottom line is it's not solving the fundamental issue. It's just trying to sort of make some political points, win some brownie points, and frankly, quite often takes the market in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and look, as I've said for many years, and when different issues have been raised over the years with when dealing with pet bonds and rentals with pets and changes to that regulation, pets in strata complexes and many other things. It's these knee-jerk reactions by governments that they don't realise that the industry itself. So from an industry perspective, you're not really you're not really assisting the potential tenant to you're not going to give first preference to the tenant that comes in with any sort of that sort of assistance. Let me say, having said that, and I know the industry, Mark. I know how on face value they they accept the changes, but behind the scenes they find 10 ways to circumvent and find the loopholes in the new legislation, as I said earlier on. But let me say this: when I was running the property management team for 18 years, the best tenants, that I could say across the board that we had were tenants with pets, right? And I'm talking about pets, I'm talking about even dogs in strata complexes. That were the one of the best tenants, and also single parents, predominantly were single mums that had rental assistance, government rental assistance, and we accommodated them in in a lot of the inner west regions where we had a number of rentals on our books, and they took care of the situation. So but the unfortunate thing, Martin, I'm not blowing my trumpet here, but the thing is not 99.9% of property managers don't view these sort of situations as favourable tenants or tenancies that they would want to take on, because one, they are dealing with snotty-nosed people that have left high school and have gone into property management. That's the truth, Martin. That's the truth. And why do we have that? We have that because licensees in charge want to cut down on costs and on overheads, and one of the biggest costs and overheads that real estate agency has is the property management team, the wages. So that's why the industry has lost a lot of great property managers because of the fault of owners of offices that have wanted to cut costs and not paid for good property management teams, and they've opted to pay for people just on the award, which is chalk and cheese when it comes to dealing with with a lot of people's assets and dealing with people in general. They just don't have the skill.
Spot on, yeah. And the industry is I think in deep trouble at the moment. And by the way, the low volume of transactions is also still putting more pressure on many people, as I hear from the industry. So there's a bit of desperation out there as well. So, but the good news is, Edwin, according to the AFR, home prices are going to rise 10% on lower taxes and interest rates. Well, they're suggesting that maybe by the time we get to November, prices might start to rise. I mean, this is another example of blowing smoke, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Look. I don't know. It just seems to be pick on Sweeney year this year, 2024. I don't really want to pick on her, but then she comes up with things. Look, when I read the headline, right? When I read the headline, I said, "Yeah, I'd go with that." But I mistakenly read the headline, or had in my mind what one of my predictions is that we will see property prices across Sydney. In many parts of Sydney, many regions of Sydney, or many markets of Sydney, go up anywhere between 5 and 10%. In some, we will see possibly 15 to 20% price rises in parts of Sydney. So I was going with that until I started reading the first paragraph, which she calls that there could be a jump of 10% nationwide. Now, you and I have discussed this at length. I mean, markets are just acting and reacting totally different, and this is where Sweeney lost me, right? But look, I read the article. I did read the article, and yeah, there is a point to be made. I think Carlos Cacho was in the English translation to Cacho is Horn. Carlos Horn, makes a point. But I think he's stuck on in first gear. When he's talking about the potential RBA drops in interest rates, higher borrowing capacity. When there's a lot of headwinds coming against the local buyers. I tell you what is going to spur the market in a lot of areas of Sydney market, Martin, is, and watch this space, is once again the silent tigers. I said before, the silent tigers in the majority, but a lot of the migrants that have been coming in have come in with the not your typical migrants that were coming in pre-2020. These new migrants that have been coming in, a lot of them are coming cashed up, have come into high-paying jobs. And as I said last year, I said, watch this space, because when these migrants land, they don't necessarily go out and buy a property. They will be accommodated by friends, relatives, or in their own properties, and they'll play a low key at first because they're watching and waiting for to get longevity of tenure with banks and longevity of tenure with under the work contract, so that they can get their loans, and they are due for those loans. And the chatter amongst the silent tigers predominantly is, well, they're ready to go. They're ready, willing, and able, and we will see a lot more competition in a lot of the western suburbs, northwest region, and even your southwest region of Sydney. As far as northwest region, as far as your even Epping, where the silent tigers are coming out in force. Why? Because now they've got that history of 6 months, 12 months tenure with a job, so then they can apply for loans. And these people have come in with not your typical 5-10% deposits that your local buyers have got. They've come in with 30-40% ready to go in the bank, plus stamp duty. So this is what's going to drive a lot of these markets if the numbers continue, and which I'm of the opinion they will continue to be low, and possibly lower than what we saw in 2023.
Absolutely, and all the signs are that the numbers will pretty much stay stagnant through the year so far. And on that, if we look at the numbers for Sydney, this is properties for sale. On the 29th, we had 14,957, and if we jump forward to the 5th of February, 15,682. So a small rise. But it is worth comparing this year and last year, and you can see that the trends are, well, not going very well, really.
No, they're not, and in reality, these are from the Sydney region, based on your domain region reports, and they're tracking almost on par. There's only these big difference between your 2024 numbers and your 2022 numbers, Martin. It's really minimal what the difference. So it's scary moving forward. We've only got potentially another 4 to 6 weeks of warm weather before we start going into where there's even more of a retreat in listings, which is winter. And if it ends up being a cold and wet winter, I mean, it's been a wet summer so far, but if it ends up being a cold and wet winter, this clam is only going to get clammier and harder to pry open, and more, again, as I keep on saying over and over again. A lot of what's happening abroad is, in my opinion, is influencing what the local, potential sellers are thinking. They're just waiting, and not only because of the uncertainty, but the other things that you mentioned as well, the low stock, rental listings, now we've got issues with supply chain issues, and almost a third of your ghost migrant Chinese workforce have gone back to China because over the last 3-4 years, they've made a shitload of money, earning anywhere between $450 to $650 per day cash in hand. They've made enough money that they're homesick, and they've gone back, and it's getting harder and harder for your local Chinese companies to find little brothers and little sisters to take on jobs. So there's a lot of delays in renovation works. There's a lot of delays in construction. There are a lot of issues with construction. So none of these things are really favouring the listings on market for becoming stronger, so that we can quench this demand that's out there on a grassroots level.
Yeah, it is interesting, Edwin. And in fact, I've been doing some analysis of the down trading sector. So these are people who already have property, but what they're looking to do is to move into smaller property, release equity, and as they perhaps move into retirement and those sorts of things. And it's interesting because the total number of people who aspire to be down traders is rising considerably. It's actually probably one of the biggest sectors of the market. But the number of people who actually successfully transacted last year compared with the previous year was a lot lower. And the reason for that is there isn't a supply of appropriate properties for the people who aspire to down trade to move to. So it's the same problem again. Lack of supply is actually freezing other sections of the market too. So they're sitting in properties which are probably bigger than they need. And, people are thinking, well, I really want to find a way to get out. So looking ahead, one of the questions in my surveys is, when do you expect to transact? So a lot of people are saying, well, we're not going to do anything this year. What we'll do is we'll hang on. We'll see what happens. Maybe next year, maybe the year after, on the principle that things perhaps will ease up a little bit. So this lack of supply of property is another fundamental reason why it is that the whole property market is gummed up.
Yeah, and again, this is something that we've been talking about, and the real issues that are facing the potential sellers, because the cost of transaction is also very high. So they may be selling the property. I'll give you an example. They may be selling a property in your $2 million range, right? And so then you've got that's somewhat weathered. It was built in the 70s, early 80s. It's becoming harder and harder to maintain. It needs a new bathroom. It needs a new kitchen. The gutters are falling down, but you're still going to get $2 million because of the hot demand. Now you're going from that as a downsizer into and let's call it's a 2-level home. Then you're going from that into trying to look in the area for a villa because townhouses are out of the question. And guess what, Martin? Villas are pushing your 1.5, 1.6 million. The ones that are done up nicely, that have got new kitchens, that have got new bathrooms. You got your ensuite. It's only a small complex. But on top of that, you've got a 5% stamp duty fee that you've got to pay, and notwithstanding the fact that you've also had to pay the selling agent a $30,000 commission to sell your home without the renovation work. So what do you do? So damned if you do, damned if you don't, so to speak. You're stuck in a you're more or less stuck in a quagmire. Hence the reason why I've been saying for a while. That is one of the reasons why we are not seeing a lot of these properties on the market from your downsizers and your empty nesters, for that very reason, for the cost to transact. And until you've got a lot more properties for lease, you don't have that luxury of saying, oh shit, if I don't sell, so if I sell and I can't buy straight away, I'll just take on a local rental, because a lot of these people don't really want to move from the area that they've spent 30, 40, 50 years of their life, Martin. And even the retirees, you're asking them to retire in Emu Plains or Blacktown or Marsden Park when they grew up around Hunters Hill and Drummoyne? I don't think so. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. And then you've got an updrift of the values of the properties that would otherwise you would think that wouldn't be sold for that much, such as your townhouses, your villas, your smaller properties. Why? Because the downsizers are going hell for leather trying to get them so as they can downsize and stay in the suburb. So this is a huge problem that a lot of people and a lot of property pundits and property commentators don't understand, and even those little websites that are based in Queensland that have funny names and report on asking prices going down by $9,000 across Sydney.
Mentioning their names, let's look at the Melbourne listings as well. So on the 29th, we had 24,776 in the Melbourne region, and if we skip forward to the 5th of the 2nd, 25,668. So once again, it's a very, very small rise, and interestingly, again, we're seeing more houses than apartments in Melbourne. So the Melbourne and Sydney markets, Edwin, are not behaving similarly, actually, at the moment, are they?
No, they're not. And over the last 2 weeks, if you notice that the amount of properties on the market that have come on Melbourne in comparison to Sydney has been double the amount of properties coming on the market, which is, it's really get out of Melbourne. That's what that tells me. It's there's a lot of people wanting to get out of Melbourne. The land envelopes or home and land packages, one could say, are really starting to climb as well. We're up to we're almost at 4,000. They're climbing steadily because it's harder to build in Melbourne than it is to build in Sydney. And as you said, a lot of and houses, they've got double the amount of houses on market. But again, we've spoken about what my theories are on that. Catherine Cashmore can perhaps give us more insight on that, because that's a neck of the woods. But I'm just going to speculate. It's because there was a lot of investors from predominantly from Sydney that parked a lot of money in the Melbourne regions. Or the outer suburbs of Melbourne in your home and land packages, where they were getting a good steady income, and now the shit's hit the fan, and the WeChat charters were the first to call, let's get out of Melbourne, and they keep on rising, because as far as they're concerned, to date, investing in Melbourne is a dud, is just as bad as buying a Chinese takeaway or a milk bar, in Hunters Hill. So it's just one of those things that they want to get out. So it's just one of those things, Martin. They're just dud investments, and they're putting the money elsewhere. Brisbane, on the other hand, is not climbing. It's really on a slow pace. But then again, I know a lot of your followers and some of my followers, that the ME is, they're saying the bidding wars there are and the open house inspections, people turning up because of the very, very low numbers on market. You've only got 1,707 homes currently on market in the Brisbane region, which is bugger all, which is nothing.
No, absolutely. And interestingly, in my surveys, I'm seeing a number of investors quitting Melbourne and looking to buy properties either in the Western Australian areas or up in Queensland, because that's where they believe the the momentum is strongest at the moment, and where the demand for rental, and by the way, rental yields are much, much higher in Queensland generally and Western Australia generally compared to Melbourne, where they're actually, a lot of people are underwater. So it is an interesting dynamic, and I think we're going to see. But clearly, there is a completely different mentality in and around, the Brisbane locale compared with Melbourne, compared with Sydney. And like we keep saying, Edwin, you need to understand these markets are not part of one homogeneous market. It is actually, a very different and discrete market, which is, I know we keep saying it, but it's universally true. Let's just talk about auctions. So, I suppose the pace of auctions, as you'd expect, has picked up a little bit.
Yeah, look, they have picked up seasonally, and also there's a little bit more on numbers on in comparison to this time last year, and again, it's because people wanting to sellers are wanting to capture as much of the perceived disruption or that they would have through the Lunar New Year, and they don't want to lose those prime buyers, which are your WeChat chatterers. So look, but then again, like we say, the mainstream and a lot of people make a big song and dance about your auction clearance rates. To me, it continues to show that there's not a lot of transactions when you think about it. Yes, they're getting very strong prices in a lot of areas. A lot of auctions are being sold prior to, particularly in your North Shore area. They're being sold prior in your northwestern region prior to the day of auction. People are offering crazy money for properties that we have noted in our conversations with agents, in our searches on properties for clients as well. So it's rather interesting. So in terms of properties on the day, you'd find that most are going to continue to get sold. They're not sold, but there's a lot going prior to the day of auction. So people are throwing silly money at the market in a lot of parts of Sydney. And one of the outstanding markets that we've seen is your Guildfords and those areas. One, because of the entry point, and there's hot demand for your Guildford region and Regent's Park, Sefton, those areas there. It's pretty much you can get some older weatherboard homes at a good entry level point. I'm not trying to spruik the market. I'm not trying to sell a property in that area. That's just from our searches for our clients and what we've seen.
And one of the things I noticed in some of those areas is that the local schools are actually judged to be relatively high quality, and that's one of the reasons why those areas are actually quite often being chased down.
Yeah, and also you got your demographics as well, Martin. Schools, and you've got in terms of your religious beliefs, very, very strong in those areas. The caters for and the schools that are there cater for that religious belief, and fundamentally, they're really good schools.
Yep.
And that's where the people want to send their kids to highly disciplined, motivated, and focusing on education and making a road into university and the future professions. So is it any wonder why they want to gravitate towards? And as I said, it's at an entry point, it's still relatively affordable to many first-time buyers as well.
Spot on. Well, let's just quickly look at the rentals. So in Sydney, on the 29th, we had 9,681. Skip forward to the 5th, 9,150. 59. So again, further falls, which is unfortunately what we would expect to see, because we know that the supply is very, very tight. And I suppose if we look in the story of Melbourne rentals, it's a pretty of a similar story. So a few weeks ago it was 9964. And dropped again. So we are seeing this continued pressure on the rental sector, and we've explained, I think, a little bit, Edwin, why it is that rentals are under huge demand, not least because ex-investors are selling.
Yeah, and that's the main gist of what's happening in Melbourne. The investors don't want to. It's too hard. It's just too hard. The returns aren't there, and as we said, as far as many investors, particularly the WeChat chatters, they're calling Melbourne a dud investment. So with regards to Sydney, a lot of it, as I said last year, early last year, and I was trying to emphasize, even towards the middle of last year, and this is where we started hearing and seeing how a lot of these properties that have been turned into budget accommodation, they don't go back into your rental, your normal rental arena. They go into your cash, cash side of things, because they've got to be monitored, and people pay by way of cash, and they're privately managed, and that, as much as it provides accommodation to people that otherwise wouldn't have accommodation, albeit cramped up in one bedroom, of the newer bedroom additions to a 3-bedroom house that all of a sudden ends up being a 7-bedroom house, but at least they're under some sort of shelter, and have got some sort of amenities. The problem with that is overcrowding and your hazards that we're going to hear a lot more of in months to come, because of badly managed properties and landlords not. I've seen some absolute abortions out there that people are trying to convince me that they are granny flats or studios or rooms to be let. I mean, I've seen some horrible things up there. And there's a fellow from Melbourne that posts some of the stuff that's going on in Melbourne and with some of the rentals, but Melbourne have got nothing on what I've seen here in Sydney.
No, unfortunately, that is the truth, Edwin. Well, as we come to the end of the show, your tip of the week is relating to road rage.
Well, we seem to be doing a lot more traveling. I seem to be spending a hell of a lot more on the road, and the team have also been reporting a lot of traffic incidents, particularly over the last week. And I myself have encountered, because I'm spending a lot more time on the road, and everybody's back from the holidays and back at school. Little Johnny and little Mary can't catch a bus anymore. They need to get picked up by mummy and daddy because they can't catch a bus or walk home, and which puts a huge burden on traffic. And people are just on the edge, and there's a lot of road rage out there. So I just say to our viewers, our followers, be careful out there. Slow down a little bit. There's a lot of tailgating going on. And there's a lot of anxious people. Strangely enough, last week the craziest moments that I've experienced last week was going into car parks and having to fight. People, predominantly ladies of all ages, for car spots. It's crazy. You almost got to take a helmet and a baseball bat when you go into a car park. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And some of my most interesting experiences have been in car parks in and around Sydney over the years, when you sort of spend all of the afternoons going around the car park trying to find a slot, and then you see one, and then somebody comes the other way and tries to steal it, as it were. Yeah, it's Crazy. Well, we live in crazy times, Edwin. I'm afraid, and I don't think anything is going to change positively in the short term. But anyway, we'll be back next week to give everybody a bit of a rundown as to what's going on in the property market. Appreciate your insights today, as always, and I hope you have a good week and keep out of the way of the baseballs.
Keep out of the way of the crazy drivers of car parks that they can't afford to turn the air conditioning on at home, so they go into the shopping centres to just sit there. That's what it is, and puts more cars on the road. Crazy times ahead. Well, I said see you next week. I'll say to you, Martin, see you tomorrow, because it seems like it was only yesterday that we had the last rain.
Yeah, it feels as though the Mondays are folded together, right? So they keep coming around every day, but we'll be back. See you later.
All the best there, man. Ciao.
Cheers.